What's up, my dudes and dudettes? This is Byron here, and welcome to another episode of Byron's Bios. Now tonight I will be reviewing another film, but this time a dark fantasy film involving puppetry. Now I know this isn't related to horror movies, but since it's October and that Halloween is coming up, I figure that hey, this is probably the right time to discuss how great this classic film is. That being Jim Henson's The Dark Crystal. And fun fact, this was directed by Jim Henson and Frank Oz, the people that we know and love. Now, for those of you that don't know, Jim Henson was an American puppeteer that created some franchises involving puppets that we know and love, like The Muppets, Sesame Street, Fraggle Rock, and even his first show that not a lot of people know about, Sam and Friends. And when Henson made this movie, this was made during the golden era of the Jim Henson Company, back when Jim Henson was around, even before my time. And as it is a dark fantasy film, it is completely different from most other franchises that Jim Henson has worked on. And I will say that I am a fan of this type of stuff related to Jim Henson, and I surely can't wait to review one of his materials. Well, I did reviews on a few Muppet movies, but this is not what I've gone over yet. So with that being said, let's get started. So, taking place in the world of Thraw, the plot is where we get this guy named Jen, played by Jim Henson and voiced by Stephen Garlick, who is raised by this noble race, the Mystics, and is told by Agra, played by Frank Oz and voiced by Billy Whitelaw, that he's the last survivor of the Gelflings, which is his own race. And he goes on this quest to find a shard of the Dark Crystal that once provided balance to the universe, and to get to the castle where he would have to put the shard on the crystal before the three sons could even combine together. Along the way, he finds the remaining shard, and he meets this girl named Kira, played by Catherine Mullen and voiced by Lisa Maxwell, and this dog-like creature named Fizzgig, played by Dave Goelz, I think that's how you pronounce his last name, and voiced by Percy Edwards, who both join Jen on this quest to fix the Dark Crystal. However, there's a huge issue. The crystal is broken, and we get this villain named Skeksis, who is a bird type of creature that has used the sinister means to gain control. It's still up to the Gelflings to find the Dark Crystal, put the shard in it, and bring peace back to the world by restoring the balance to Thraw and overthrow the evil. So, I know it's an old movie, but if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but I'm sure a lot of older fans know what I'm talking about. I mean, all I can say is, wow. That movie felt like a motion simulator ride full of creativity and this unique vision that Jim Henson had when he made this film. And there is a bunch to go over because this is amazing. Well, first, let's talk about the puppetry. The way that Jim Henson and the crew designed the puppets for this film took this movie to a whole new level. The way they designed the Gelflings, Mystics, and Skeksis were designed in really interesting forms of what they look like. From the good-looking characters to the disgusting evil villains that they had made. They did everything with them as puppets, even in body costumes, and as marionette type of puppets, which Jim Henson was really good at doing that when it comes to the Muppets. And every single character was unique by how they were designed and how those different races of each species work. And just so you are aware, there are no human actors in this film. That's the only difference of this masterpiece from Jim Henson, from other projects he had done. Jim Henson had a huge influence in not only the storyline, but also, like I said, this unique vision that he had when he decided to go through this route, creating an original story that focuses on dark fantasy and a darker story compared to other things he had done that are brighter. It seems like to me that Jim knew how to create a story when it comes to the Dark Crystal, and it shows. Now, what I mean by dark, I meant that Jim Henson wanted to make this film darker to where he wanted a targeted audience of kids and families to have the feeling of being frightened as a healthy emotion to process because of how it was developed as a darker aspect from the storytelling. I mean, hey, it makes a lot of sense because it's the Dark Crystal, duh. It was supposed to be a darker tone because it was supposed to be an inspiration from the Brothers Grimm fairy tales, whatever that is. And I can definitely see where it is coming from. I mean, the movie is mainly for older children and adults that are fans of this film. And hell, my parents watched this movie when they were a lot younger, and not to mention, some say that the movie was banned for it being too scary. Yeah, but I ain't buying it. Also, fun fact, when Brian Frog did some designs of concepts, characters, and collaborations for the movie, he designed them before the script of the movie was even completed. And Jim didn't realize how cool the designs were when Brian made them, but he later discovered that it could work for the movie after all. Yeah, shocking, I know. As I mentioned before, the setting for the Dark Crystal is dark fantasy, and it takes place on an alien planet with very unique creatures. The way Jim Henson did all this was the pre-Zelda that everybody had. In fact, it actually had those vibes. And it is on par that it felt like an anime film because of the unique creatures, character voices, conceptual designing, the nerve-wracking storyline, and the ancient history being revolved, but with puppets. So the way the movie was made was mesmerizing to watch as an adult. The legacy of this film is important because this movie has aged really well in its standards and on so many levels. The music composing is interesting, the characters are unique, the adventure that was part of the storyline was phenomenal, and yeah, it had its moments, especially the ones that didn't know existed. And honestly, I nearly teared up towards the end of the film because of how beautiful it is. Not to mention Kira's singing voice in one of the scenes sounded so beautiful. You know, I do have a friend of mine from high school that actually did a review on The Dark Crystal several years ago, and he stated some really good points about The Dark Crystal and such. I'm like, yeah, I could definitely see that. Like, he's into sci-fi and the dark fantasy. Darn, I really miss that guy. His name's Kane. Honestly, I wonder what he's doing now. I know he's a gamer, but I haven't seen him in a while. So like, based on how well done this movie was made, Jim Henson literally knew what he was doing, even through his unique vision, and this goes to show how gifted this guy was. And it's a shame that he's no longer with us. May he rest in peace. Also, there was going to be a sequel to this movie, fun fact. Same with spin-offs, but none of them came to fruition. However, it is amazing how we got a prequel series on Netflix called The Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance, which honestly, it's as good as the film itself. And I only watched a couple of episodes of that series with my dad, and it was interesting. And also, I did get exposed to the film because of Defunctland discussing the legacy of Jim Henson, which, by the way, I highly recommend watching the videos, though I didn't bother watching The Dark Crystal until recently. So why did I see it? Well, here's the reason. My mom ended up getting tickets to see The Dark Crystal in theaters for its re-release as part of the Jim Henson Company's 70th anniversary that they're celebrating this year. And when we went to watch the movie, it was a lot better than I expected. Trust me, my mom grew up watching the Muppets and all that Jim Henson stuff, so she was definitely into that movie. And not to mention, she's also a big fan of another Jim Henson film starring the late David Bowie called Labyrinth, which is also dark fantasy, but it's more of a family film and a musical. And yes, I remember watching that film in middle school. Don't get me started on that. Overall, I will say that The Dark Crystal is indeed a cult classic, and that is why I give it a 9 out of 10. It is a masterpiece that preteens, teenagers, and adults will enjoy. Well, sure, there are some moments that I didn't really care for, where the Skeksis creature sounded all annoying and such, but like, despite that, the rest was just great for what it was. And looking back, I wish I was exposed to the movie years earlier, and I could have been more interested in it than I was for a while. So that is it for this episode of Byron's Bios. I hope you enjoyed this review on The Dark Crystal. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. And until then, this is me, Byron, signing off. Peace.